Andy, here's a good one. Our board member asked our executive director to record a message for social media talking about what they have done for the organization and why they would be a great choice for an upcoming election. Is this a good idea?
It's not only a bad idea, it's probably illegal, right? So it depends on the only time that this could be okay is if the executive director is talking about it in their capacity as just a private individual. But that's really, really hard because you are always going to, especially an executive director, is going to be connected with the organization. So the IRS is very specific. And we just talk, Stacey, we'll talk about what things you can do, but one of the things you cannot do is either say that I would like this as an organization, as a nonprofit. The IRS prohibits you from saying, I would like this person to be elected for this position, or I would like you to not elect this person for this position. You can think it, but you can't say it. You also can't say anything about particular laws, like, they're voting on this. I would like you to vote yes on this, or I would like you to vote no on this. If something's been enrolled and you can't even say out loud, I would like the governor to veto this, right? You cannot have an opinion on legislation or on people that are running for office as a nonprofit. It's not allowed.
Yeah, and there's some great resources that we'll put a few links in the show notes that I did my own research on this because I knew the general answer, but I thought let's dig deeper because there's a lot of nuances when it comes to advocacy, lobbying, what is and isn't accepted. And so it kind of falls into two buckets, right? Nonpartisan election activities and partisan election activities, right? And it's the nonpartisan election activities that are okay. So as an example, that would be some voter education, right? Like distributing questionnaires, nonpartisan questionnaires to some of the candidates running for office. Maybe attending town halls or other forums to raise awareness about the importance of your issue. And that kind of thing is absolutely permissible. Direct lobbying, grassroots lobbying, that gets into other more complicated things, but still those are absolutely acceptable within this kind of nonpartisan election bucket. And then kind of just encouraging and helping people to get to the post on election day to vote, right? Like those kinds of things are absolutely permissible. But when you get into like showing any kind of favoritism, right, on like you said, like with a candidate, like endorsing, opposing a candidate, rating candidates like on their support of an issue, like we give this person an F or whatever, like, right, not at all cool. So it's definitely something, especially I think so many organizations after what we've all experienced over the last couple of years, legislation advocacy is top of mind more than ever, it feels like to me. And so please educate yourself, like look at a couple of the links we put in here because we're only scratching the surface, and educate yourself, your board, your staff, because I think people do these things innocently. And your board member who asked you to do this, that's always a sensitive situation, right? Because they want you to endorse them. That's going to help their campaign. And you're just going to have to educate them too, because I'm guessing they probably didn't realize, and they're not looking at it from the nonprofit lens. They're looking at it from their, I want to get elected lens, and I'm an active board member of this nonprofit. But right. They're actually putting you in jeopardy. So don't do it.
Yeah, it's against their fiduciary duty, honestly. And I wanted to sort of add on to one of the things that you said, is because one of the things that I think a lot of nonprofits that don't look into this deeply think is that any kind of lobbying is prohibited. Like you can't have an opinion on anything, and that's not true. You can have lots of opinions, and you can talk to people about creating legislation. You can talk to people about like the kinds of legislation you want to see. You can educate people on issues. You just have to record that. And if it's something that, and the IRS is cagey about it, right? There's no like, if it's 10% of your expenditures, you can't do it, right? It's like, I think the word is insignificant, yes. Right? And insignificant means different things to different people. The IRS definitely has an opinion on what they think that means, but you can actually file a form with the IRS that says, we intend to lobby. You send it to them. You say, we're going to lobby on the issues that are important to us. Just we're making you aware. And then on that tax form, when you do your 990, there's a separate piece you fill out about how much you spent and what kinds of things you were lobbying on. So you're kind of making it explicit that we know we're doing this, which is a good thing to do, I think, from an accounting
yes.
perspective. We know we're doing this. We're not going into it blindly or confusedly. we're explaining that we understand how we do it, and this is how much we spend on it, just so you can check our work, right? Which is always good. So I wouldn't take away like, be careful. You don't understand it, don't do anything. It's more like the rules are complicated.
Yes.
And you should probably spend, if this is something that's important to your nonprofit, and it honestly probably should be, you should probably spend some time digging into it to make sure you know what you can do and what's allowed.
From what I recall, Andy, that form you're talking about, I think it's a 501H election. Does that sound?
I think that's right.
Think
we
that's
will
right.
put the official link in the show notes because our memories
aren't
that great.
It's a pretty simple form, if I
and
remember.
it's like the 501H. It's an election. It's a 501H election, and you say I'm going to lobby, and then when you do your 990 every year, there's a piece that goes with it that explains what you did.
Nonprofit governance.
Nonprofit answers.
Nonprofit board. Nonprofit management.
Nonprofit marketing. Nonprofit resources.
The Alliance for Nevada Nonprofits presents Nonprofit Everything, the podcast about everything nonprofit, with your host, Andy Shurick and Stacey Wedding.
Stacey, do you know what tomorrow is?
I'm really thinking hard. Like I was like, is it someone's birthday that I've forgotten about? Like, is it a holiday I'm not aware of?
It's the Alliance for Nevada Nonprofits Fall Conference. It actually starts tomorrow on Thursday. Well, I've got good news and bad news. This is Andy recording something early Wednesday morning as an update to what Stacey and I were just talking about. The conference, which was scheduled to start tomorrow, has actually been rescheduled to spring 2022. So the good news is, if you haven't registered or if tomorrow's too late to find out about something and you're ready to go, it's going to be the same conference. It's just been rescheduled to Thursday, March 24th and Friday, March 25th, 2022. So there's still plenty of time to get tickets. There's lots of tickets available, obviously. So take everything we just said and pretend we are talking about March 24th and 25th, 2022, and not about tomorrow. We'll see you then. So there's still tickets available. If you go to the Alliance for Nevada Nonprofits webpage, you can get tickets there. They're still available. Or the Nonprofit Everything show notes will have a link directly to the registration page. You can get there. It's going to be a ton of good content.
Like jam-packed.
Jam-packed.
Like everything from board stuff, marketing, fundraising, trends, leadership, right? Health and wellness stuff. Like there's a whole mix of really cool topics. So it's something that I think anyone would want to go, whatever stage you're at in the nonprofit world, right? Whether you're sort of new into the world of nonprofits or, really have been a seasoned pro, you can probably add a lot to the conversation as well. So I hope we see a mix of people.
I think that'd be great. So it's also going to be virtual. So it's in person at the center down in Las Vegas. So if you can come and actually talk to other humans, that would be fun. But it's virtual as well. So if you're actually listening to this from someplace other than Southern Nevada, you can actually participate as well because they have a virtual event ticket that you can participate in everything, just like everything else.
And I will just say some of the speakers that we have lined up or that Anne has lined up for this are literally those speakers that you see on kind of agendas across the country for conference agendas across the country. I mean, these are people who know their stuff. They are experts not only for our local community in Nevada, but also, across the country. So you don't want to miss it. Andy, another board question. Notice the board questions we get.
A theme lately.
Yeah, there is a theme. How do you navigate when a board member wants you to add a line of business to an organization that will require the investment of staff resources, time, and the expenditure of funds that you feel should be invested into another area that could have a greater impact and a greater return on investment?
This is the kind of question I feel myself dying inside as soon as I hear questions like this, because this exact scenario has happened to me more than once, where a board member has this great idea.
Oh, don't they all?
They have this great idea and they want you to execute it. And you, like, especially if you're not the executive director, if you're the unlucky CFO who gets this question and the executive director is just forwarding an email from the board, can you look into this? It's now your job to create guess at this giant business model that they've proposed just because they're having an extra Chardonnay at the bar. And now you've got this program idea that you're going to need to figure out, how am I going to let this person down easy? Because like, this is totally out of scope for our mission. Or like look at our strategic plan. This is totally not in it at all, right?
Imagine that.
Yeah. So the answer is, it's really, really hard. It's really, really hard. Going back to, if you have a strategic plan that talks about what your goals are over the next X number of years, use that as ammunition to say, look, we've got these priorities. The correct, it's hard to do as a staff member too. If you're the ED, you have a little more juice, right?
Yeah.
But if you're a staff member, you're like, I need some cover.
I
need some covering fire for this, because this is not going to be a pleasant conversation. Like, this is the way you come up with new ideas is you go through the strategic planning committee, who comes up with what as a group, we all come up with what the direction of the organization is going to be. And then we kind of figure out how we're going to get there over a period of time. And lobbing grenades over the wall with your awesome new business idea is just not super helpful. But I don't know how to say that without like getting fired, honestly.
So I mean, here's my thing. I think part of it is so I would take the approach of, strategic plan, but I would also say, why don't we put it like, we have this rolling list as ideas come up for our next strategic plan, like that when we get ready to do our planning again, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we'll make sure we address it. But as you know, like, we're kind of on this course. And so we're sticking to it now. The board approved it. So we want to kind of stick to it now. And, and at the end of the day, if that doesn't settle this person down, then I think it's okay to be like, obviously this is more an executive director level conversation with the board member, but like, I think it's okay for an ED to say, bring it up to the board chair, and perhaps, and the board chair can decide if they want to put it on the next board agenda or whatever. Then you kind of fill in your board chair. I mean, unless it is the board chair, God help us, right? Mm-hmm. But it's still then at the end of the day, like, I think the thing that has to be reminded, if this board member won't give up and is like a dog with a bone, which many are, mm-hmm. then if that doesn't appease them to like just put it on that list to make sure you address at some point, then, you put it up. You bring it up at a board meeting, and you as the executive director then come armed with ammunition of like, hey, like, we need to like here's our litmus test for how we decide whether we're going to take on a new line item, and like remind the board of that, remind them. And, at the end of the day, they're a one unit governing body. Not one person gets to be able to make any decision on their own. Mm-hmm. So like, I think like if it really came down to it, you bring it to the board, but like, hopefully you can just appease this board member in the meantime and say thanks, and we'll put it on the list. And then, maybe they've forgotten about it. Maybe they're like squirrel syndrome and they come up with new ideas every day. Great. We'll add it to the list. And, and like, here's our vetting process when that time comes. Like, we vetted out, here's the ideas that made the most sense for the way we make decisions here. Right.
Yeah. I've seen executive directors fired over this though. Like, so this was a very long time ago and not in Nevada. So don't think it's somebody we know. And it was an organization that had multiple properties around the city. They had lots of properties around the city, and they were having cash problems. So the board was already nervous and tense about like, how do we do what we need to do because we're not bringing in enough revenue. And one of the board members said, well, we've got all this property around town. Why don't we like lease out the bottom floor of some of these places and make, lease it out for, coffee shops and dry cleaners and stuff like that, where we can just like, the bottom floor can then be retail, and then the stuff we do can be above that. And the executive director did what we would expect and say, that's not in our plan, right? Like we're a nonprofit. Our job is to fundraise. Like if the mission isn't compelling to a large enough group of people, then we need to let somebody else do this work. And the board just was so freaked out about money and had the sense that, like a lot of entrepreneurs do, that the idea that they just had is only good for the next 15 minutes. And if we don't jump on this right now, somebody else is going to grab this idea, and then we're not going to have it anymore, right? So we have to do this right now. And so that cautious delay that the executive director provided, to correctly so, to say like, look, this is not what we are. Like I don't rent dry cleaning, but I don't know what that is, right? That's not what you hired me to do. And the board got rid of him. He was gone. And it's that's the kind of like cautionary tale of like, how do you build into your board? Like what can you do to prevent that? If that's, so one of the things we talk about all the time is cash flow, right?
Right.
So cash flow is like like liquidity is the most important, my opinion. This is Andy's soapbox, right? Liquidity is the most important financial metric for a nonprofit. Like, do we have the cash to be able to do what we need to do? And there's like layers of things that you can do for liquidity. Number one is like raising money, a rainy day fund, like getting the board to understand that we need to raise, breaking even might not be what we want to do. We want to actually bring in more money than we spend so that we can create sort of a nest egg that then we can then blow on a nice big, a big new building or a new program, like expand once we've got the cash, right? Or get loans or things like that. The business idea is way down that bottom of that liquidity list. Like a brand new line of business is like right above calling our vendors and telling them we're going to pay slow, telling our employees don't cash your paycheck today because we need the money for next week, or declaring bankruptcy. Like so coming up with a brand new business idea is right above that in the liquidity pyramid. And so like coming up with other strategies that prevent board members from like locking on to great new ideas, like because everything else seems to be running smoothly, might be one solution to that too.
I think that's a great solution. Another solution, and I've mentioned it before, and I'll just, for the sake of repeating myself, like I believe there's tools out there like strategy screening tools that you come up with criteria as an organization that when you are making big decisions, and define big, right? But like a new line item, a new business line item, whatever that is, right? Like what are the key criteria that have to be met, sort of quick gut check? Do they meet the quick cursory like gut check, right? Does this further our mission? Does this further our strategic plan? Whatever, like
do we have any of the expertise
right? Like,
required?
Do you have any
to
of
do
the
this?
expertise?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, you don't even continue wasting your energy or time. If
Right.
the answer is yes on those, then you go into a deeper dive analysis of some of what you're talking about. And then you say, okay, like, so here's a second layer of questions. And you create that objective framework with, it can be yes, as simple as yes, no. I've seen organizations actually scale it, like put points around it, or like 1 to 10, like how much. And so you create that objective process during like a strategic planning retreat or a board retreat or something, where you create that so that when these situations come up, you go, great, let's turn to our strategy tool, like our strategy criteria tool, right? Like, because then it takes the emotion and the personal thing out of it. Yeah. So I feel like those are things that people could do to kind of avoid this. But God, I feel for this person who wrote this question.
I do. Our board recently established a marketing committee. At the first meeting, there was a big discussion about which target population to market to, given the limited dollars we have. Does it make more sense to focus on potential donors so we can see some return on our investment of marketing dollars, or would it be better to start with finding more people who need the services we offer?
So, okay, I've got to ask you your body language, because those who can't see you, like Andy's got sort of a weird,
confused by the question. I was
weird,
like trying to make sure I understood it. That's
okay,
all.
a
Like,
weird
so
facial
what
expression.
is it asking?
Like, I think it's asking, right? Like, I think it's talking about marketing, right? Like, do you put more eggs in the basket of marketing to donors or potential donors, or do you put it in the basket of getting more clients? And so attracting people who need your services. And so my answer is both are important. You can't have one without the other. But at the end of the day, taking a step back, and people are probably so tired of hearing me, and I think you've said it before, Andy, right? Like, I know we both have, like, what is your plan and your goals around it? Like, where are you trying to go? If you have an overflow and demand of people needing your services and that like a waiting list, then obviously marketing at the
I think that's what
doesn't make sense.
That's what I was confused about, is like how do you have a nonprofit and not know who your target constituent population is? How did you get to today and not know what mission you were trying to serve?
Right. And see, and to me, like I read this question and kept thinking, like, it strikes me as an organization that probably has done a variety of tactics, like all the typical random acts of marketing we see. Oh, let's do this social media. Let's update this website. Oh, we got a free billboard. Let's do the free billboard. Right. Like all these just reactive sort of things without actually taking a step back and saying, okay, who is it we serve, and what, like, and that's multiple people, right? Like that's, maybe, I mean, we serve this client base and we also need the money and the, sort of traction to get money to go toward this client base. So like, I don't know, I feel like it needs to start back with kind of getting rooted in your identity, like who you are, your purpose. Like if these kinds of questions are coming up, like doing kind of an identity check of like, who are we? What do we do? What do we not do? Who is our ideal client, both from who we serve as well as sort of the type of donor. Maybe we don't care. Like it can be anybody who's got money, right? Like whatever, but like sort of taking that step back, evaluating, creating like, where are we going with that? And then build your marketing around that. And I know it's coming from a limited budget standpoint. How many people say we have a limited marketing budget? So we can only, right, like market to XYZ like right now, or okay, then pick it based on what your greatest need is and where you're trying to go, like what your greatest growth area is. Like, I don't know if I'm oversimplifying it, but I feel like that's kind of where my gut reaction is to this one.
I think if this is your question, send us a follow-up, because I'd like to hear more detail about what it is what the organization does. Like, so maybe more context about what the organization does would help us find a way to answer it more than just the really basic thing, which is, I don't think you know what your mission is. Because if you don't know who your target constituents are, it makes me wonder, like, what kind of nonprofit can have a mission that doesn't have an identified target constituency?
But maybe it's less about we don't know who they are and more we don't know where to find them. Okay. Right? Like, because I'm sitting here thinking,
so it may be difficult to access the target constituents.
Yeah, maybe it's that
they're either it's, I'm thinking of a human services organization that might be trying to find people that are marginalized in some way and don't want to put their heads up and say, I need help. Right. So how do we find them?
And maybe they're not in traditional forms of technology, right? So I'm almost wondering if it's, I don't know, I'm just guessing, but like maybe it's rooted in something like that. Okay. Which, I mean, to me, I guess I also feel like there's an opportunity there. Like what I would do is then, if that is the case, and we're speculating a lot here. So again, we're
answering our own questions.
We're creating our own scenario here for you. So anyways, but like what I'm thinking is like, what I would do in that case? Like if you're not sure exactly where you find the people you do, like what if I'm sure you've served somebody before, like get a group of people and say, where do you go to get your information? Like, where do you, like, is it whatever? Or is there like a bulletin board with flyers at your grocery store that you see? Like, I don't know, like, right. Yeah. But like asking them, because like, then you get to hear that from them. And, and from a donor standpoint, obviously, I mean, if you have a limited budget, you probably can't afford it, but there's all sorts of demographic studies and ways to figure out who's on what social media channels, whatever. And like, don't expect, I do want to say this warning, like every board and every marketing committee seems to go down the path of, great, let's do all this marketing because we're going to get all this money from our marketing. And it's like, so not, as you know, Andy, like it's so not just that easy, right? Like it's sort of that magic of, oh, I heard this news story about the organization, and oh, I saw this, like, oh, I got a communication from the organization. Oh, there's this like, I saw something on social media about them. So it's sort of like this rounded out approach that generally speaking, everyone says, well, I'm not getting any money back from this marketing vehicle, so I must be doing something wrong. And it's just generally not that black and white and clear cut.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing maybe is if it is difficulty in finding constituents, maybe one of the cool things about nonprofits generally is that they're regional. Right? There's usually like some in an area. So a lot of times if you reach outside of the area that you're in, so if you are in Nevada, if you're in Las Vegas and you find somebody in Phoenix, they're probably reaching a different population. You maybe talk to them about like, how do you do it? Right. Yeah, and most people are, and I've always discovered that most people are pretty friendly, right? At sharing things that they know. People like to pretend like they're experts. Stacey and I, right? We like that people like to be asked questions and be able to answer them and just reach out because you're not in competition with these people.
No.
And a lot of times you can learn a bunch of really new cool stuff. Well, you did it. Congratulations. You got to the end of another episode of Nonprofit Everything. Again, this is a production of the Alliance for Nevada Nonprofits. The way this works is you send us questions and Stacey and I either try to answer them, or if we can't or think we can get a better answer from somebody else, we'll call in a guest expert to answer. So please send us those questions. That's the way the podcast works. If you don't send us questions, we'll just, I don't know, what we talk about. I'll talk about my kids, and you can talk about your animals. How's
okay,
that?
my animals are my kids.
Yeah, so if you want to listen to a half an hour of Andy talking about his kids and Stacey talking about,
Oh, my fur babies are so cute, though.
so save everyone from that by sending us some questions.